You know, I think we'll take the win. Welcome back, folks, to Random Rod Shop. Today we're going to continue with trying to get our 1970 International pickup on a 2002 Tahoe chassis. Today we're going to work on getting the shifter on the steering column where it shifts the 4L60, down below. And hopefully we're going to get this radiator and fan shroud and stuff like that mounted. That's the plan anyway. If you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and subscribe, hit the bell, hit the like button, make a comment. We appreciate it. Let's get started. So what I'm thinking about is using a square body shifter mechanism. So this would have been the same, I think, from 73 to 87. The way it works is you've got the shifter or the rod that goes from the steering column. Let's see, it goes up like that and it goes down to a bell crank. This is bolted to the frame rail, and this piece here is bolted to the transmission, right? So this is what shifts the transmission, and this bell crank is how you connect the rod on the column to the transmission. Pretty simple device. From what I've seen, crawling under the pickup, it looks like there's plenty of room to do this. And one question might be, well, the square bodies probably didn't have a 4L60. Here's the linkage off the 4L60, but if you look at them, they have the same mounting point. So you can put the shift bracket off of the Turbo 350 on a 4L60 because they mount the same. So that's a go. So the question is, can we get that mounted on the frame rail of the Tahoe? And after I crawled under it, if you look at that, let's see here, and I'm kind of forgetting part. In stock form, there's a spring there. I didn't put spring on because it's too hard to talk about it when you're trying to hold the spring together, but there's the way it actually fits in the pickup. This end is on the transmission, this end bolts to the frame rail. On the Tahoe, the frame rail is back here. So to make this work on the Tahoe, we need a sort of an extension bracket to weld or bolt to the Tahoe frame here and bolt to the square body transmission bracket frame. Now, I've made a first pass at this, and right now it's kind of rough, but this is sort of what I come up with. I started with let's see here. Yeah, I started with a 3x3 square tubing, just kind of whacked it off, welded on some ears so I could clamp it on under there. These bolts match these bolts. So ostensibly, it should be just a matter of getting that mounted on the Tahoe frame in the right place, and it looks like this is just going to hook up. I've already sort of eyeballed this under the truck, so the length and everything looks like it's close. So I think, let me get this all set up underneath the truck, and let's have a look at it and see if we can sort of figure out, what's it going to take to mount, and is this going to work? So I'll get back with you once I got this stuff on the truck. Okay, it's the next morning. Yesterday my son came out. He wanted to put some bucket seats in his S10, so we went looking for a set of bucket seats so that we can recover them and he can put them in his S10. Since he was here, I had him go the pasture with me, and we took the tractor and we found a gas tank. Maybe it's going to work. I don't know yet. We'll see. That's going to be the next video after this one, is me fiddling with trying to put a fuel tank back in this thing. I also had him help me dig out a transmission that we're going to use on a future project here. So yesterday was working a little bit on this international and then go out in the pasture. Come back and work a little bit. So in the midst of all of that, I ended up getting the shifter on. It really wasn't any more complicated than when I showed you on the bench. The hardest part was trying to get the bracket held up in there, which was, my son helped me. You need like 3 hands, so my son helped me get it clamped up there. Once it was clamped up there, it was pretty easy to get hooked up. The one thing to keep in mind if you're going to use this style of shifter is that the center of rotation of the shifter isn't the same on both ends, right? The end that hooks to the transmission is kind of dog-legged, and therefore when it pivots on the ball and socket on the frame side, it's not pivoting around the same axis of rotation on the transmission side. So to get that, what I think was right, I went out and looked at a couple of square bodies I got out there just to try to get the geometry right. Just keep in mind, if you're going to use this transmission, that shaft is going to wiggle when you move your shifter. So other than that, I mean, once you realize that putting it in is pretty easy. I'm going to flip the camera around and try to give you a picture. I have painted them so we can see them hopefully. So let's have a look. All right, so there's the bracket. That's the, let me see if I get in there. There we go. So that's the bracket. That's that 3x3 square tubing that I showed you on the bench. And there's the bracket I took off the square body. And there's the bell crank. And that's connected to the little U-shaped bracket that goes on the transmission. I had to lengthen the rod that goes from the steering column down to the bell crank. Now that actually is exactly how International built it. So that tubing that you're seeing that I extended the square body shifter rod with is actually the tubing I cut off of the International shifter. So in my mind, that's the way International intended it to be. So it fits in with the flavor of the whole truck. I'm gonna put the camera on a tripod here and show you the shifter moving up and down. Seems to work fine. I got all the cotter pins in it, got everything tightened up. I think it's done. Okay, I'm gonna shut you off. I'm gonna try to go gather up all the parts and see if we can work on this radiator. Okay, all right, I'm ready to get hooked up on this radiator. I've tried to take a bunch of dimensions to try to work out a plan. So I'm gonna go through and kind of highlight the situation we got right now. To start with, this is the Tahoe radiator. This is the radiator that came out of the 2002 Tahoe. This is the fan shroud on it. If I measure the total height of this package, I got it right at 11 3/4 inches. I've got a 2001, 2002 Silverado that has a 5.3 in it. Pretty much the same thing as the Tahoe. This is a 2002 Tahoe. If I measure from the face of the shroud to the front of the pulleys on the engine, let me get down here. So if I measure from the face of the shroud to the face of the pulley, that's about 1 3/4 inches. So in stock form, there's about 1 3/4 gap between the plane of the pulleys and the face of this radiator shroud. And the face of this radiator shroud. So if I add all of that together, let's see, 11 3/4, 1 3/4, 11, 12, plus 1.5 inches, 13.5 inches. So that's how much, that's the package size of the Tahoe radiator in the stock application. If I come over and I measure what I've got on the International, I'm going to take you off the camera so you can actually see what's going on here. So if we look at the International, and keep in mind there's a 1-inch lip right here. All right, so from the 1-inch lip to the face of my pulleys, that's about 10 inches. And it's really close to 10 inches. I put a straight edge across there and measured it out. It's really close to 10 inches. So in terms of available space, the most I can get, let me see here, there we go. The most I can get is if I take that 1-inch lip out, I can get 11 inches of clear space. That needs 13.5 inches. So what I think I'm going to do is I want to see if we can cut 2.5 inches off that fan shroud. So I'm going to put you back on a tripod and we're going to see if we can measure something out here. So if I'm going to go 2.5 inches down, where is that going to put me? I got a plate that's 2.5 inches. That works out pretty slick. So that means I'm going to have to cut. All right, I've got 2.5 inches of the shroud to cut there. It looks like when I get to this corner, I'm going to have to cut down here about 1/4 inch. But other than that, well, let's see here. Not the most precise, but it'll get us in the ballpark. Well, it looks like these two corners right here, it looks like these two corners right here are the only ones that I'm actually going to dig into the actual shroud itself. Other than that, I'll be cutting the band off that covers the fan. And that's really, that'll affect the airflow a little bit, but I'd rather have an inefficient shroud than no shroud. So I'm gonna mark this off. I gotta clean this up. I think what I'm gonna try to do is run some masking tape on there all the way around to kind of define a cut line. Let me do that, and I'll get back to you when I start cutting this thing. Okay, well, I think I got it marked out. I used a silver pen. I went and borrowed some of my beautiful wife's cleaner, and it cleaned the shroud up so nice. I'm like, wow, I just used my silver pen and mark it. I don't need to, use any tape or anything. Anyway, I got to get it back before she finds out, but okay. So we're at the point of, just about at the point of no return. I'm going to get the grinder out and we're gonna whack it off. You know, go big or go home. So let me get the grinder set up and we're gonna cut it off. Well, if I did all my measurements right, this thing ought to set in there. What do you think the probability of that happening is? Still kind of stinging from the tailgate, so the self-confidence is a little waning right now. Let's have a look. If I remember right, yeah, let's see here. Nope, this one goes in first. And when I say this goes in first, I'm thinking in terms of how the sequence of events to put the radiator in the Tahoe. I think the radiator goes in next. I'm gonna get a piece of wire or something. I need to hold the radiator up just a little bit. Oh, well. That makes me pretty happy. Let me take you off the camera and let me show you what I got. I gotta admit, I was expecting a lot more problems. Let me show you. Okay, so let me see if I can get a light up here. Okay, so let's see here. Well, you know, maybe it's going to be better on the other side. You can see the mount. So basically, I'm going to have to just put an ear out there to hold that bottom radiator mount. That seems pretty straightforward. I've got, I don't know if I can get that so you can see it. Let me have a look. There we go. So you can see, I think you can see, I've got just a little bit of a gap between the core support, and the radiator. And if I don't, I'll make sure there's a little bit of a gap right there. My height looks good. Bottom of the fan looks like it's going to be okay. Let me get the radiator, or let me get the camera around the other side. Maybe I can see a little better. Oh, there we go. So now you can see that's the 2.5 inch gap, or 1 3/4 inch gap that I was looking for between the face of that pulley. And I may have just a touch more than that, but that's okay. The fan's still inside. I mean, you can just see the fan. So it's still pretty much still inside the fan shroud. The radiator hose right there looks like it's exactly where it needs to be. So it would appear that I put some ears on the bottom, and we figure out a bracket for the top, right, to mount this ear to, which looks pretty straightforward to me. We'll have to fabricate a cover to go over the top here, but that seems pretty straightforward. Even still got the caution fan readable. I don't know, you can't ask for anything more than that. Okay, I'm going to make some plates for the bottom of the radiator. I think what I'm going to end up doing is just cutting out some flat stock with a hole in it, and we'll just figure out how we're going to mount it, because I really don't know yet. I mean, obviously we're going to weld it in there, but let's have a look. So let me go make the flat stock with a hole in it, and I'm getting better at watching the battery, so I need to change the battery in this thing too. So I'll get back to you. Okay, 2 plates cut. Not sure how that's going to go in there, but at least that'll give me something to stick up there and try to get some measurements off of. This really shouldn't be that big a deal. It's probably a lot like the shifter. Getting them clamped is probably going to be the bigger deal. Let me get back with you. Well, I guess sometimes even a blind pig finds an acorn. The radiator is mounted. I made those flat plates, and I was worried about how I was going to mount them. Let me let me show you how this worked out. So, as it turns out, the elevation that the radiator needed to be worked out so that I could mount that plate right on the bottom of the core support. Now, I don't think that's going to be a problem. Now that it's positioned, I can clean that up. I can weld that bracket in, and if I need a little bit more support, I can come from here to here and just put just a little bit of an angle bracket, but I don't really think that's going to be a problem. I used a double piece of cardboard to space between the radiator and the core support, so there's nothing hitting there. And let me show you on the top side, we got clearance on the other side too. I was a little bit worried that this bend right here, this is where the old radiator mounted. I was a little bit worried that that was actually gonna rub on the radiator. But, and I don't know if you can, I don't even know if I can get in there. Let's see here. Well, I'm having a hard time getting the light in there, but there is clearance between that core support and the radiator all the way down. I can see daylight. I can see daylight all the way down. The other side is, let's see here. The other side looks good too. I'm not sure how that's going to show up on the video, but I've got clearance between the radiator and the core support. I've got plenty of room on the bottom because I was kind of curious about this. I've got room on the bottom to actually bring the power steering cooler up and mount it in front of the radiator where it was. So that's a good thing. All right, well, well, this was kind of an uneventful video given the last 2 or 3. You know, I think we'll take the win. And we're going to call this one. Please subscribe, like, hit the bell, make a comment, and we'll see you next time. I think it's about time to see if we can mount a fuel tank in this thing, because we are getting really close to seeing if this thing's going to start. Until next time.